madhouse. Cursing and smashing things, squashing feelings and tearing holes in each other's hearts, so many that I, for one, have lost the count. Son climbing onto the father's back to pin him down, father cornering his mother for her to produce him the will of wealth that she will leave him upon her death. Father's wife, my mother, packing her suitcase and eloping from the back door. Father saying mean things to her daughter that she'll probably never forget. I won't pay a penny for your education. It's a madhouse. By the time I was 13, I'd figured out that something was wrong, because we never sat together for dinners like the Sardas or Bianis or Godawats would. I'd begun inviting only my mum for the PTA meetings and insisted on her coming alone without dad. I would selectively skip my house timings and parallelly place my play hours with dad's house hours, run outdoors when he came indoors, and I would treat dad as a shadow that casted darkness upon me. I would never initiate a conversation with him, being afraid that I would never be able to anticipate what course that might take. Will he impulsively spew out strong language at me? Will he scar me with his absurd thoughts? I would never, ever think of inviting my friends over. You see, I didn't want to cause a casualty. It's a madhouse after all. A house where moods are governed not by situations, season, or weather, but by dopamine levels. A house that became a haunted telltale for the small town I grew up in, a house that seesawed between mania and depression, and so I learned that my dad was not one beast of a man, but a patient of bipolar disorder. Insides of his brain like a maze that he couldn't navigate through, racing thoughts and confusing signals that would often trigger false alarms, delusions. You see, the wiring of his nervous system is so meddled that it often propels a reasonless riot inside of him. And each time, he's the one who's left more scarred than the previous manic episode that he had. There's a yin to this yang. After the high voltage of mania, there's a short circuit called depression, what brings in what seems like an eternal darkness. I saw Dad sink into his blanket until late afternoons, feeling like a worthless piece of junk that he thought of hurling on the train tracks, so it all finished with one final bang. Therapy helps. Medication helps. Love helps. I always lived in a terror of his untimely fits, mood swings that would flood a festival, landslide over a happy occasion, stab a birthday party in its back, and pluck the flame off every candlestick. Dicurate and other drugs did help stabilize his mood to an extent, but he altered his prescription at times. Perhaps because his body couldn't take so much of medication. Perhaps because he thought he was becoming too numb to feel anything normally at all. Perhaps because his hands quivered a lot because of the medication that he took. And that's when it all spiraled downwards. You cannot be a doctor to your own illness. Just as you cannot save the sinking ship when you are the one drowning. 17-year-old I and Mum left to hunt an asylum for Dad. That's when for the first time I looked dementia and schizophrenia in its eyes and realized that they would be the neighbors of my dad's bipolar disorder, and I shuddered. I couldn't imagine my dad out of the madhouse that we had built. I wondered if he would grow bitter upon us for leaving him alone with his disorder. I wondered if abandoning is an option that a family could ever choose. We couldn't. And so it continued. The cursing, the smashing of things. It's a madhouse after all. My mother likes to bake and make chocolates, and yoga keeps her calm, and singing makes her happy. But you see, I know so little of my dad, because it becomes difficult to decipher how much of him is the illness and how much of him is he himself. I'm working my way around that. Besides mapping his mania against the number of times he's called me in a day, I now make a sincere effort to call him myself. Initiate a conversation. Ask him how he's doing. Ask him if he likes winters. Ask him if he feels any better. I didn't know any better back then because in the hush of this society, mental illness education is out of syllabus. India alone has more than 10 million cases of bipolar disorder per year. Per year, like think about it. And it's widespread, it's worldwide. From Nina Simone to Deepika Padukone, so many people live this seesaw of a life every day. I've turned my thought processes around, and now instead of thinking, would I have turned out any differently had I grown in a normal family, I now find more reasons to love my madhouse, of how we always stuck around Dad no matter how much his illness pushed us away. And no matter how much of bitch his mania has been to my mother always told me that your father has a golden heart. And in a fleeting heartbeat or two, I watch it too, I see it. And so now I know, come what may, the cursing, the smashing, the blaming, the yelling, abundant love and the right dosage of Dicurit will always be available in this madhouse. Thank you.